Welcome to another episode of Sideline Sanity with me, Michele Tafoya, sponsored by Legacy Precious Metals. There has never been a better time to invest in precious metals. Go to legacypminvestments.com, legacypminvestments.com. Do you know the real story about Colin Kaepernick's decision to take a knee, kneel during the anthem? Do you know it? I'm willing to bet that you don't know a very important detail about this story. But my next guest does, because he is a major part of Colin Kaepernick's story, a major part. And you're going to hear the details, which are fascinating and probably most of you have never heard before. It's a really interesting story. And this guest, Nate Boyer, who played for the Seattle Seahawks for a stretch, has teamed up with Jay Glazer of Fox Sports to develop MVP, Merging Vets and Players, which actually takes, our military vets and pairs them up with athletes. They both realize that at some point in their lives, they've got to hang up their uniforms, whether it's their military uniform or their football uniform or basketball or whatever it is. At some point, your life goes on beyond that. And who do you become? What do you become? Great movie out called MVP, which I watched last weekend. Nate Boyer is one of the co-stars. And it talks about this exact dilemma faced by military vets who come home and then what? And by pro players, even just college players who have just their entire lives have been about their sport and excelling at their game. And suddenly it's over. What do they do? Where do they go? How do they become their next selves, if you will? This conversation with Nate Boyer is fantastic. You'll get the details on Colin Kaepernick, which is a story unto itself, and hear more about how vets and former players are way more alike than we thought. That's coming up.
For nearly 3 decades, she's reported the action from the sidelines. She started very young. She's covered the NBA, NFL, Olympics, and the college football and basketball national championships. And now, during these insane times in our world, Michele Tafoya thinks we need a serious dose of sanity. This is Sideline Sanity with your host, one of the sanest people on planet Earth, Michele Tafoya.
Nate, it is great to see you. I enjoyed the film MVP. And as I was watching it, I was taking in the importance of it, but I know when I've enjoyed a film because I think about it the following day. And I did think about it the following day. What was your biggest hope, kind of the goal that you wanted to achieve with this?
Well, first of all, thank you, Michele. I really appreciate that. That definitely means a lot. I think, the biggest goal, sort of achieved by what you were saying, I wanted people to kind of think about it. Think about this experience, from a veteran standpoint, from an athlete standpoint, and in some way be able to relate it to their own experiences. It's hard to compare, anything to anything anymore. I think it's also dangerous at times. You want to be real careful how you explain things. And when you talk about, a combat veteran's experience and a former NFL player's experience, the first thing that even jumps in my mind is you can't compare sports to war. You know what I mean? And it's important to distinguish that that's not the intent of the film, and that's not what we do in the film. And it's actually made pretty implicitly clear that's not what it's about. It's about that camaraderie, that locker room, that mission, the structure, identifying with a uniform that you wear, and it becoming sort of your identity, and then losing it at a pretty young age. A lot of veterans, a lot of athletes, mid-20s, and it's you feel like you've you've already peaked, and this is it. It'll never be this good again. I'll never have this team again, and that's tough. So I want people to walk away with that understanding, but also that there's hope for everybody. I mean, just because we've had some traumatic things happen in our life, or we're going through a tough transition, and it feels like all is lost and sort of hopeless, that's just not the truth. I mean, we are very capable people, veterans, athletes, everybody, human beings. Yeah. And we can start things later in our life, and that's okay. And we can figure it out, and we can still be great.
I think that's what really hit me. I've known a lot of athletes, former NFL players, current NFL players, and you acknowledge it's tough when they hang it up, and what are they going to do next? And you forget. And I remember a defensive line coach saying to me one time, because he was concerned about the mental health of his athletes. This was an NFL defensive line coach. And he said to me, they've got so much more life after football than they have during football. And that really stuck with me. It struck me and it stuck with me. So as I'm watching this character in your film, he's been cut, obviously, for a younger guy. And he is now wondering, what in the hell who am I? What am I going to do? And then you've got your character, the vet, who has his own struggles. And they meet up, and though very, very different in a lot of ways, so similar in a lot of ways. And it's a really great connection. So as I mentioned in my pre-show, what the film talks about and really gets across the idea of your organization, your foundation, merging veterans and players. When did this start? How did you develop it? Give us sort of the thumbnail sketch of MVP.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you again for first of all for watching the film, but I'm glad it stuck with you. That's important.
Yeah.
MVP started in 2015. So I myself, I was in the Army for about 10 years, spent all my time in the Special Forces, loved it for the most part. Of course, there's difficult things we encounter, whether it's through training or, loss of people is always the toughest thing. But I had a good experience. I had a very good experience in the military, and it not only taught me a lot, it really developed me. I mean, I joined in my early 20s, and I don't want to say I was headed down a path of destruction. I wasn't necessarily that. I was just kind of drifting and not really sure who I was or what I wanted to be, or like how I could make a difference in other people's lives. I just felt like if I wasn't around, no one would. It's not that people wouldn't care, but it's just nothing would change. Like nothing would, the trains wouldn't go off the tracks in any way. And that's not a good feeling. Like we all want to feel like we not only belong, but that we're making some kind of a difference and that we matter to other people. Like if we weren't around, we're necessary.
People would miss us. Something, it would be different. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the military it definitely gave me that, but it also gave me these different mentors in my life. Besides, I have two great parents. I love them to death. They taught me a lot, but I just always struggled, I think, making the type of friends or having the being around the group of people that were, productive, inspiring, like out there doing stuff. And I think a lot of it was because I felt like I didn't deserve it, or like I wasn't good enough to be a part of that pack, be a part of that group. So, and I think a lot of people do that. A lot of teenagers do that, and it makes it that much harder when you limit yourself, and you get in your head that, well, I'm supposed to be part of this group, because I'm not exceptional in any way or whatever. And so I just fed that BS narrative to myself for years. And I finally, at one point in my life, I was like, what are you doing? Like, you don't have to be this. You can be whatever you want. And the military really helped develop that part of me. And I did the first half of it on active duty. And then the second half of it, I did in the Texas National Guard when I finally decided to go back to college. And going back to school was challenging. I mean, I was a 29-year-old freshman. I didn't. Yeah, it was just odd, But
it's not a common thing, and I laugh because it must have. I mean, when you describe that word freshman, everyone gets this image of their mind and what a freshman in college looks like, and they're not 29 years old. And how was that?
It was weird. It was weird. I remember, I mean, just like walking around in a backpack on campus felt super weird. You know, I hadn't done it since high school. And definitely the looks, and it wasn't like people, it's not like, there was no looks of, it wasn't negative. People were just like kind of thrown a bit. You know, if I walk into their class and sit down next to them, it's just like, who is this? You know, who's this old guy that's sitting next to me? But honestly, especially in the football locker room, but even around campus generally, I learned a lot, and everybody was very, not only like accepting, but I think a lot of people enjoyed having me around and having me be there. I think it would have been really cool.
I think it would have been cool to have a teammate, a classmate who was that much older, wiser, had been through the military, and then wiser. Why not walk on to the football team? Go ahead, walk on. Let's see, try out for the college football team, even though you never played organized football in your life. Why not? And I mean, I think that I can't imagine not benefiting from someone like you in that experience. So, you stayed all 4 years?
Hopefully, I did. Yeah, I did. I stayed all 4 years. Yeah, you know, I never played, like you said, I never played football before, and I really regretted it because it was my favorite sport growing up. And I grew up in the Bay Area, so it was like the 49ers dynasty when I was a kid.
Oh, you know, yeah.
Just winning Super Bowls, and it was amazing. And it was like, I started playing, I was soccer first, and then I started playing Little League and then basketball. And it was the same kind of thing. It was just this confidence thing of like, well, because I was a good athlete, but not a great one. So I was never, I was like the sixth man on the basketball team. And, I was baseball was my best sport, but it wasn't my favorite of the things I played. So I didn't put as much time into it. And with football, I was like, well, if I go play football, I'll probably lose my spot, on the baseball team or my starting spot or whatever. Right? And just like all these things that, in retrospect, none of them matter, but that's what we think about when we're, 14 years old or whatever. And the things we worry about, especially for like a sports nut. And so I just never did it, and it like really regretted it. So I was like, well, when I go to school, I'm just going to try out. So I do it, made the team, and eventually started long snapping and got on the field, and, played at Texas, had the opportunity in Seattle with the Seahawks. And when I got cut from that, I hadn't even thought about the transition yet, because with the military, I went right into football. So I kind of had another mission and a locker room and team and all these things that I didn't know that I would need right there, And it was, they were a lot younger, but in some ways, you said wiser. In some ways, we're not that much wiser, you know what I mean? Like, I still was like, I was 19 in a lot of ways too. And it was like, this was fun. And I was playing football, and I had my brothers in the locker room, and, there's 100,000 people in the stands. Like, it matters to a lot of people, and it was special, and it was cool. And so I had that thing I had to focus on, and that challenge that I needed. And then when I got cut and I'd gotten out of the military earlier that year in 2015, all of a sudden I had both of these uniforms and locker rooms and the teams and all that. And now I got none of them. And I was 34 years old, so still, pretty young, and just feeling like, all right, what do I even do now? I considered going back in the military. And then I was like, I was interested in the film and TV stuff, but I hadn't really started that journey, and was kind of nervous about that. And I was at this crossroads, and fortunately, I'd become good friends with Jay Glazer. And Jay.
And how did that friendship start?
So that started when I got done in college. I finished at Texas, started my last 3 years as a long snapper, but I was small. I say I'm 5'11", I'm really 5'10". And I'm light, compared to most of these guys on the line. And I was older and late to the party as far as playing. So I thought, there's no way I'm going to have a shot in the NFL. So, and understandably. So I was like, well, I'll just, I'll head out to Los Angeles. I'll finish my master's degree. I was doing an internship out here with a production company. And I was like, I'll do that, and we'll just figure it out. And I'm like getting ready to head out there, and I get a call from the senior all-star game called the Medal of Honor Bowl. They don't play it anymore. They're, as you know, they've got a few different, like the Reese's Senior Bowl, and
Yeah.
I don't know if they still do the East-West Shrine game. That used to be one of them. But anyways, they've got those games, and it's like a showcase for these college players around coaches, front office folks, an opportunity for them to kind of spend a week of practice with being watched by all these people and get evaluated with an opportunity at the next level. Well, the Medal of Honor Bowl, I think mostly because of the Medal of Honor Society sort of sponsoring the game, and it was played at the Citadel out in Charleston, and very like historic, kind of a cool, like not kind of, it was a really cool opportunity. So I go out there, and I didn't realize all these scouts and coaches are going to be there. And a few of them, I met with like 4 teams, and they were like, "Man, you got to put some weight on, but like you should go for it. You're good snapper. Like, why not?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not? I mean, the worst happens, nobody calls." And so when I came out to LA, Jay has a gym here called Unbreakable Performance Center, which I'm actually in right now. I'm in the MVP office of Unbreakable. And he trains a lot of athletes who come up here and train from various sports, a lot of MMA, football in the off season, stuff like that. And I met him. Somebody said, "Hey, you got to go up there, introduce yourself, just tell him your story and see what happens." And I go up here, and Jay was like, he just immediately embraced me and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna put you on scholarship. Don't worry about it. We'll train you for this time, and we'll see what happens." And he helped get me a sports agent and all that. And sure enough, that was how I got that opportunity. I ended up getting a call from the Rams and the Seahawks on the last day of the draft in 2015. And I went to Seattle because they'd been to back-to-back Super Bowls, and the team was just, there was so many characters on the team. And at the time, the Rams were in St. Louis. No offense to St. Louis, and they weren't very good. They weren't very good. It just made all the sense to go to Seattle. So, yeah. So I went, but then when I got cut and came back to LA, Jay was like, "Hey, I know you're thinking about going back in and you got all those other things, but like, there's a lot of people in your shoes right now, veterans and athletes, who feel exactly what you're feeling. And at some point, you got to let the game go. You got to let the military go and move forward. And you can still do a lot of great stuff. It's not like you should just rest on your laurels and, do nothing. But it's a young man's game for the most part.
Yeah. And you're in your, kind of early to mid 30s at that point. Right. So when we come back from this break, we'll pick up with Nate. He's now cut from the Seattle Seahawks, but he's lived that dream for a moment. And he's talking with Jay Glazer. For people who don't know Fox Sports, he's their reporter. He's just a great guy, does a lot of stuff, as Nate has elaborated. And so where does their relationship go next? Find out in just a moment. A food shortage could be coming even in the U.S. That's a quote from economic experts. So I'm not making that up. That's why survival food, yes, survival food is more important than ever. Hear me out. You can create a little stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits. So you're always covered. This is not ordinary food. We're talking good for 25 years, super survival food, hand-packed right in a family-owned facility in the United States of America, giving jobs to over 200 Americans. The kits, they're compact, they're sturdy, they're water resistant, they're stackable. You just put them in your pantry, in your basement, wherever. They've got different delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinner. You can make these meals in 20 minutes. Just add boiling water. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com, that's the number 4, and use code Michele, Michele, to get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store, including this 3-month survival kit. You'll get their famous year-long guarantee after your order, plus free shipping on orders over $97. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. And we say yes to that. Just go to 4patriots.com, the number 4, patriots.com, use code Michele, Michele, and get 10% off. That's 4patriots.com, code Michele, Michele with 1 L. Start building your own stockpile and start today. All right, Nate. So you're talking with Jay Glazer, and he's telling you, it might be time to leave the uniforms, both of them, behind. And what happened next?
So, He'd been thinking about this for a while, and I didn't know that. He'd been thinking about a way to bring veterans and athletes together and help with that transition, help with that next stage in life. He tells this story often to people about his experience on 9/11, because he was in New York City and he lost one of his best friends. And, it was a tragic day for everybody, but I was in Los Angeles. So it affected me in a big way, but in a very different way. It was more introspective of like, what am I doing? What's going on in the world that I don't understand? How can I be a part of making a difference in some way? And for Jay, it was like he was there, and he went down to ground zero and he's going to all the hospitals trying to find his friend. And then he says, in the midst of all this like fear and sadness and, heartache of the moment, he remembers these fighter jets like flying overhead, at 1,000 miles an hour, or whatever. And he just like looked up and he felt, as scary as that might feel, like the deafening sound and all that, he's like, I felt this like overwhelming feeling of safety and like gratefulness. And, not that he wasn't appreciative of the military, but it was like, that was a moment that he really connected with, it really resonated with him because it was real. And he was in the middle of that. And he was like, okay, we're safe. Like, thank God. And he tells that story, and he's telling me about that. And he was just like, ever since that day, like, and being in New York and watching, that season later as the Yankees make their run, and then we get into the football season the next year, and eventually Pat Tillman joins the military, all these things. He's always just wanted to do something like that. And after meeting me and me spending time in both of those locker rooms, he was like, I think we should do this together. I'll call up some of my athlete buddies and you call some of your vet buddies, and, we'll just get them together, bring them up to the gym, and we'll get a workout in and hang out and just, I don't know. And that's how it started.
And that's kind of what happens in the film as well. It's sort of how this develops. It's different sets of circumstances, but people from either side saying we should do this. The first time you brought people together, how many pro, athletes showed up, and how many vets showed up?
Well, the very very first one. So we're talking about it, and Jay, as he's a super busy guy, and especially during football season type stuff, it's crazy, right? So I'm asking him, I'm like, when should we use the gym? What's a good time? He's like, oh, I'm not sure. We'll have to figure that out, because it's an operating gym, and he wanted to make sure it was a time when we could shut the doors and it was just for the vets and athletes,
right?
So we could have that privacy. So I had been introduced to a gentleman named Jim Zenner, who in the movie Dan Lauria, he was the dad on the Wonder Years. He plays that barracks administrator. He's actually a Vietnam veteran, which is a really cool.
I didn't know
side
that
story
That's
there.
Really
it's super interesting. So the person he's portraying, this guy named Jim, who had started, he was a homeless veteran himself, and he'd started this facility that was a place for these people that are transitioning, that were having trouble in a lot of ways. Like a lot of these people, a lot of these, this place it's all men, mostly infantry guys. A lot of them came from a really tough neighborhood, joined the military, it's kind of escaping their circumstances. And then when it's over, they're kind of thrown right back into that place without much direction. And, it was tough for them to recover and transition. So this facility was called the Hollywood Veterans Center. And essentially it was a shelter, a place where these people can get back on their feet, and they all have to participate and like help. It's almost like a little commune there, and they're actively looking for work and trying to move forward. So I got introduced to Jim. He brought me down there, and I met some of these guys, and I'm sitting there talking to them, and ignorantly, I'm thinking when I go down there, I'm thinking homeless veteran. I'm going to meet all these kind of probably a little bit older, maybe mostly Vietnam era, that are really struggling with staying clean and sober and like all this stuff, right? And not that some younger vets don't have that, a lot of them do, but that was not the experience at all when I went down there. Most of them were younger than me, and just as I mentioned, like really just having trouble. Never had to open a bank account or pay bills and rent, like all this stuff, and figuring out how to get a job. Like I'm meeting this guy that he's got back-to-back deployments, lost a lot of his men. It's actually one of the people that is the Zephyr character in the movie is loosely based on.
Okay.
And he was, he lost a lot of buddies overseas, even more back home to suicide. And then he came back and was like, he didn't know what to do. He got a job at Forever 21, like stocking shelves, because he didn't know what else. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, man, you're so capable. Like people would love to give you an opportunity, but he just didn't see that in himself. And I kind of understood that because I felt that way at times. And so that individual, his name's Denver. He's on our staff at MVP now. He's been working with us for like 6 years, which is awesome. He brought some of those people from the shelter up to the gym. And I worked out with him one day, like on a Sunday afternoon. And I called Jay afterwards. I was like, dude, we got to do this again and bring, when you can do it, bring some athletes up. So Jay doesn't just bring athletes up. He brings in literally Randy Couture and like Tony Gonzalez and these like Hall of Famers and other athletes as well. But so the next week we meet up in there with these vets and they're, they see these guys and they're like intimidated. They're like, oh, I don't belong in a room with Randy Couture and Tony. Like, no, this is, what am I doing here? Jay Glazer I watch him on TV every week. I shouldn't be, I'm not part of this group. And then we work out and we huddle up and to hear, just like we recreated in the movie, to hear Randy Couture and Tony Gonzalez tell the stories about how they felt even inadequate and how tough it was for them to leave the uniform and the pride that they felt and not being able to share it with anybody because everyone looks up to me. I got to be strong. I got to be this tough guy. I can't admit that I miss it. It was just something that it was for them to say that it was cathartic for them, but also to hear the vets be like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually feel the exact same way. And I have that same experience, even though I didn't play sports like that. I mean, I was in the military, but that's the same feeling I have and that connection. So it really just started from there and blossomed into, 8 chapters now around the country. And we're still growing as best we can.
That's fantastic. And are the chapters around the country based where you're going to find more vets or more players or both? How do you determine where you're going to open a branch? Both.
Yeah, I mean, both. I mean, so far, so right now we're in Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Chicago, Atlanta, New York, Seattle, Dallas, and Phoenix. With New York, we're still trying to get back in post-pandemic. Every other place we're back up operating in the gyms and kind of fully running.
New York.
New York's been tough, but it's an important place. There's so many vets. I think there's like 100,000 just in Manhattan. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot. So, and there's athletes. So like a place like that, if it's a major sports market or a place where a lot of the athletes will go after the game is over, like Phoenix, for instance, where we're in now, a lot of athletes, Dallas, a lot of athletes. Those places make sense, but we're not going to hinder ourselves. If there's somebody, whether it's an individual or a corporation or someone's like, hey, I want to help fund a chapter in my city, like we will go there. We will figure that out. We're working right now on trying to figure out New Orleans and Tampa and Denver, all these other places. It's just a matter of getting our ducks in a row. But there's it's maybe not surprising, but there are veterans everywhere, and we'll find them. They'll find us. That's the easy part, I guess.
It's just incredible work that you're doing. And you also had, and a lot of people may not know this who were casual viewers of the NFL, that you had an influence over one of the biggest stories in America, in NFL history, in American history, quite frankly. We're going to get into that. Does the name Colin Kaepernick ring a bell? Back after this. These economic times are dizzying, really, with the cost of everything, inflation where it is, gas prices, all of it. And you watch the stock market and you go, holy moly, what do I do if I want to plan my retirement? Well, I would recommend part of what you do is invest in gold and silver. Precious metals can help protect you against a weakening dollar. They can be a hedge against inflation. And the only people I trust when investing in gold and silver, legacy precious metals. You need options. So why are investors turning to gold? for protection against a weakening dollar and a hedge against inflation. Legacy Precious Metals is the only company I trust when investing in gold and silver. You need the investment that's going to protect your retirement. Call them today, Legacy Precious Metals. You want to be proactive. Remember 2008? Those who invested in gold saw significant gains. Others lost their retirements. Here's a great long-term play. Speak to an IRA expert at Legacy Precious Metals. Get all your questions answered. 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or download their free investor's guide at legacypminvestments.com, legacypminvestments.com. All right, Nate. So you notice, you talked about how big a 49ers fan you were, and you saw that one of their quarterbacks, Colin Kaepernick, was sitting during the national anthem. And what was your initial reaction to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, my initial reaction was definitely one of hurt, and not necessarily and selfish hurt. Not hurting for Cap and what he was doing, but hurting because the flag, the anthem, like those symbols meant something very special to me because of my time in the military. We've all got a different connection to things like that, whether it be positive, negative, based on our experience. And for me, it was largely, positive because of my time in the service, and I guess also negative in the sense, or sad in the sense of like, I carried my best friend's casket that was draped in an American flag, right? And watched the folded flag be handed to his wife. So it just, when I see those things, they mean something different. When I hear the anthem, the one game I played in Seattle with the Seahawks, and I was on the field for the anthem, I bawled my eyes out.
Yeah. It's a moving, for people who don't know, when you're standing out there, a lot of the times, if you're watching a game on TV, you don't know that the anthem is played before every game. And for me, having done so many of them, it gets me every freaking time. Every time. It's just a moment of unity. It's a moment of beauty. It's a moment of appreciation. And so you wrote an open letter to Cap. And what prompted that? What did you think was going to happen?
Oh, man, I didn't know what was going to happen for sure. So it's literally a year after I had my opportunity in Seattle, and was playing in the preseason. Now it's 1 year later, 2016, also in the preseason. We've just started operating MVP, so we're bringing together these vets and athletes. We're doing this stuff on a weekly basis in the gym. I have now finished my master's degree, and I'm starting to get some opportunities in the film and TV space. Everything's going well in that regard. No reason for me to jump into a national, which would become a global political conversation. But when that happened, as I mentioned earlier, I was a huge 49er fan and a big Kaepernick fan, because when he got there, we went from being pretty average to back-to-back NFC championship games, almost won the Super Bowl, and that was on the back of Cap. He, just changed it all for us. And I was I pulled for this guy. And then I saw that, I heard about it first, that he wasn't sitting, he was sitting during the anthem. He wasn't standing.
Yeah. He was sitting on a Gatorade ice box or something. Or on the bench. He was not, at this point, he's not kneeling. He's just sitting. It's very clear. Yeah. He does not want to stand with his teammates for the anthem. So you hear about it, right, and then you see it.
Yeah.
And those feelings boil up. So you write this letter.
Yeah. Yeah. I got reached out to it was CNN and Fox News and MSNBC. And I think they all wanted me to come on and maybe debate. That's the sense I got, debate why he's right or why he's wrong. And I was I don't want to do that. First of all, the reason he's doing this, I agree with. I mean, the why, that wasn't the focus initially, but it was police brutality, social injustice, racial inequality, people not being held accountable. I don't want that. If it was a military situation and we're out there, not being responsible or being held accountable for when we do wrong or make mistakes. That's not okay. Like, I wouldn't be okay with that, and we shouldn't be okay with that generally. Right. But you also have to understand, working in law enforcement is incredibly hard. It's dangerous. It doesn't pay very well. It's there's nuance to all this stuff. So I was just like, I'm not taking a side here. I don't want to do that. So I agreed to write an open letter through the Army Times, which is a small publication, or smaller anyway, that is kind of geared towards the military. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do anything, I'll write this letter, write like an open letter to Cap, kind of through this medium, so that people in the military will read it, and maybe if they have a strong opinion one way or the other, they will at least consider the other side, and sort of, I don't know, just find some reason in all this, and kind of relax. I think a lot of people felt that way. A lot of people already felt at this point in 2016, it's the middle of an election cycle. It was Donald Trump
quite an election
Hillary
cycle,
Clinton.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and Trump. Yep.
It was all that. So it's like, we've got all this stuff going on and we're getting pulled apart. And I was like, well, maybe there's an opportunity amidst all this to kind of help bring people together and at least have healthy conversations. So I wrote the letter just explaining my experience in the military. Even before the military, I went to the Darfur and did some relief work in like the border of Chad and Sudan. And that trip kind of spawned me finally signing up and joining. And I talk about that experience and seeing that type of oppression in the midst of a genocide, and how that really moved me to take action and to do something. And then serving in the military and serving alongside Iraqis and Afghan people, and who I don't have a lot of similarities with culturally, and the customs are different, beliefs, but we still work together. And at the end of the day, when you spend a lot of time with them, you realize we're really not that different. And a lot of those people became good friends of mine and people that I trusted. So, I kind of talked about all that and then just said, but at the end of the day, I don't know what it's like to be you. I don't know what it's like to be a person of color. I don't know any of these things. So for me to tell you this is right or wrong is not fair. I haven't walked that walk. I don't know. So I support what you're doing. I look forward to the day that you're inspired to stand again. I'll stand right next to you, and then I just signed it, and when I sent it off, and it was really cool to see the reaction. And it started, Michele, with honestly, with your community, with the sports writer community and the broadcaster community, because of my short time playing, that they are the ones who really shared it outward. It came out, and then it was just getting blasted on Twitter and all this stuff. And it got to Cap, and he ended up reading it and reached out to me and said he wanted to meet. So I met in the lobby of the team hotel in San Diego. They were playing the Chargers that night in their final preseason game. And Cap's starting, even though at that time he was a backup. I think the year before or 2 years before, he'd gotten hurt and struggled to come back. And so they brought on Blaine Gabbert, who was a starter. But in the final, as we all know, in the last preseason game, if you're a football fan, the starters don't usually play, especially the quarterback.
Right.
So Cap was starting that night, and it's like military appreciation night in San Diego. They're doing a flyover, like Navy SEALs jumping into the stadium, and he's saying he's not going to stand for the anthem, and like it's just already, going crazy. And so we sat in the lobby. Eric Reed joined us, who was on the team at the time, and we just had a conversation about all of this, and it was a very lighthearted conversation, like kind of like two guys in a locker room, or three guys, I guess I should say, in a locker room that just are talking through something, trying to understand the other's perspective, and and just.
So you felt like it was an open
honestly.
Dialogue. Did you
Totally.
feel like they were hearing you? I mean, you strike me as the kind of person. Obviously, you wrote the letter in a very open-minded fashion. Did you feel you were being heard?
I think I absolutely. And at the end of the day, though, it was more about, I wanted to hear them. I wanted to hear, like, what was the plan? What's the plan, or what's the end state here? And it was so early on that I don't know if there really was one yet. It was just I guess Cap's end state, from what I gathered, was until things change, I'm not moving. Basically, like until things start to change, and we need to see some definitive action, and not just from me and players. Like, I want to see the country do this, And it took a long time before things actually started to happen. I feel like it wasn't until George Floyd 4 years later that things really did start to actually happen. But, but he explained why, and he talked about also one thing that he made sure and did right out the gate, which I appreciated, was he was very thankful and grateful for my service. He said one of his best friends was stationed just across the water in Coronado from where we were sitting, and that mattered to him. And I thought that was important. And he then asked me after this long conversation, do you think there's another way I can protest that's not going to offend people in the military? Because I'm not going to stand until I see things change, but like, I'm willing to hear if there's other ideas. And I was like, okay. I mean, I appreciate that, but I'm definitely not the authority on what's offensive and what's not, you know? But I said, to me, in my opinion, I think being alongside your teammates is the most important thing. I mean, they're from all different walks of life, shapes, sizes, colors, beliefs. And at the end of the day, you got to go out on the field and you line up next to these people and you have one common goal, and you got to work together. And that's a good lesson for just the general public, I think. We do the same thing in the military. I got people on my team, I don't say two words with when the mission's over, but when we're out there, I know they would take a bullet for me. I would do the same. It's all about the people on my right and left. And so I said, I think being alongside your teammates is important. He said, all right, like I agree, but but I'm not going to stand. Like, I've committed to this until things start to change. And I said, all right, well then I think the only option that makes sense is taking a knee. I think it would be better. To me, it would feel more like you're proactive, and also maybe some reverence to the situation, because understanding and recognizing that it does mean something very different to some people, to people in the military, for instance. And he thought it was more powerful, actually. He thought that was better. And so him and Eric took a knee that night, during the game. I stood next to them on the sideline. And, there was still a lot of boos from the crowd. And it was just...
What did you make of that?
I mean, it just hurt me. It hurt me for them. It hurt me for them, but also for the moment. I was like, to me, if this really means that much to you, to someone that's saying and how important this moment is, but you're willing to, you're going to boo, and you're going to focus it on what somebody else is doing, and you're not making it about why we're doing this, why we're honoring America right now. If it's going to be about Kaepernick and Eric Reed and whoever else, then like you don't really care. That's more offensive to me than kneeling. To boo in that moment and to make it about that. Like I just thought, I understood where some of that hurt comes from, but like that's not the action that makes sense. That's not the way to react to that. And so that was hard to hear, and and I caught flack from people in the military I served with, and a lot of people reached out with, oh, you're a disgrace to the Green Beret, and like saying these things. Because
you were alongside them? That's why?
Yeah, because I was alongside them, and to them, I mean, some of the way the news came out, it was just like, sometimes people read that as, well, Nate told Cap to protest.
To kneel, yeah.
Yeah, and Nate suggested that Colin Kaepernick protest, and I'm like, that's not what I did at all.
Yeah,
in any way, if you read if you're able to read the letter, you can see where I was kind of coming from. And then anyway, it's good to be able to talk about this and share that, because a lot of people still don't know that, and
I know it's true.
Tough.
And, in reading the descriptions of your meeting with him and all of that and how this went down, it really made a difference to me. So I'm glad you're able to tell this story. What did you make, however, when, Cap put out his Netflix series and likened the combine to the slave trade?
I mean, there was I had a lot of people reach out from the football community and the military community about that. And it's like, they come back at me again.
Yeah, you're now Cap's best friend, right?
yeah. I didn't direct it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But yeah, I mean, I think that was tough for a lot of people, because understanding that, and I know where some of that imagery, comes from, that thought. Like I remember even being at that Medal of Honor Bowl and playing in they had the day where they had all the players come in, and you're just in your tights, and they're doing body comp and like checking all these things out. And so like from an imagery standpoint, I can see that, but also it's not, you're there on your own free will. First of all.
Thank you. Yeah.
And then
that was what bothered me the most, Nate, was that people get to go to the combine. It's a privilege to go to the combine. You're there because if you're going to make it in the NFL, you're going to make a ton of money. No one's forcing you to do this. So that's where the breakdown really initiated for me. And I think it's really difficult. We hear this a lot, but it's really difficult for the average football fan to say, hang on a second. We know how much money y'all make. We know how much money the league makes. And no one's telling you must go into the NFL. And so, to lecture about it in this way. So, but in honesty, the whole interchange you had with Cap and the idea of kneeling, it made sense to me. And I appreciated that story so much because I never really saw where he went from just sitting on the bench to taking the knee. Right. And Nate, you're the guy.
Well, it was I always will commend Cap and Eric for initiating that conversation. I mean, yes, I wrote that letter, but he reached out to me and asked if he could meet. Yeah. And then he asked the question. So his willingness, for him, what I always appreciated was when we sat down, at least in that moment at that time, it wasn't about, let me prove to you, Nate, while I'm justified in what I'm doing. It was never about that. It was him asking questions and wanting to learn more and kind of, and I appreciated that. And then the willingness to do something different, I think there's a lot lost on that, and I felt like maybe there was an opportunity for him to remind people of that and say that. But I also would imagine when you got one side of this argument that's fully embracing you, pulling you in, appreciating you, and the other side just kind of attacking you, it's hard to stay in the middle. It's tough. And I've done my best to do it, and I haven't gotten nearly the flack and that he's gotten. I'm sure I can't even imagine. So that's got to be tough. But I always thought, like, man, if you could just stay there and say, I hear you, this is why I'm doing this, instead of kind of shifting all the way over to the other side of things.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
You know what? I always said he and any other player who wanted to do that were well within their rights. This is about freedom of speech, about freedom of expression. They are absolutely within their rights. Whether or not you agree with them is up to you. And if you choose to be offended by it, I'm sort of with you in that it pained me because I did see it as something that was dividing us. And clearly it was exacerbated by that whole election cycle with the divisive,
100%.
Just all of it. It was this perfect storm. I wonder from you now, before I let you go, as a guy who served, as a guy who is bringing people together to help people heal. And clearly you and Jay, and I know Jay as well, is you're patriotic. You want things to go well for this country. How optimistic are you that we're going to find our way back to a more unified place? Clearly the dog wants to know.
Tell me. I'm optimistic. I really am. I mean, and just to your point there, like, this is something I talk to veterans about when they're upset at the situation, or they hear about it and they're like, why did you do that? And I'm like, well, those are the rights we fought for. Like, when we took the oath to defend the Constitution, it includes the First Amendment and all those things. Like, that's why we signed up to do. Like, that's literally what the oath says. So you signed up for this. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it, because there's plenty of things you do in the military. We all did and do that we didn't agree with, we didn't want to do, but it was like, this is what I signed up for. And that's one of those things, defending that freedom, defending that right. But I am optimistic. And I think we need more athlete and veteran leaders who have that platform, have that respect to kind of to step up, and bring people together. Like that's got to be the number one focus to me, is like whatever we're doing, it is literally all inclusive. When I say all inclusive, that includes people that are very conservative. You know what I mean? Like that includes that. When we talk about inclusion and diversity, like it has to include everybody. But the more we do that, and sports is a great way to do that, like a great way. I mean,
totally.
That's why youth sports is so important, because you just you're forced to, work alongside these other people that have these different backgrounds. But I think I do see the hope, and I think we are survivors. It'll get to a point where we'll fix it because we have to. I hope. This is my hope. Or we're just gonna, it's just gonna continue to pull us apart, and it's just not fun. No one wants to. It's not healthy.
It's not healthy, and there's no good ending there. There's no good ending there. The good ending is when we pull together and we embrace our differences and realize what we have here, which is right now freedom and liberty to pursue what we want to pursue. And
exactly.
So I love this organization. It's MVP, Merging Veterans and Players. For people who want to find it online, it is, remind me what it is, because I took my glasses off.
All good. It's vetsandplayers.org. VETSAND.
Vetsandplayers.org.
Exactly.
Right. When we're gonna share that with everyone. We're gonna let people know it. And I recommend the movie. It's MVP with Nate Boyer, and there's a scene in there, Nate, where you go off, and I was like, man, it was powerful. It was powerful. I don't know where you summoned all that emotion. That's a whole nother podcast I'm sure we could do. And maybe we will sometime, because I loved what you guys accomplished here. I really do. And I love what you're continuing to accomplish. So thank you for joining us, and we'll do it again, I hope. Okay.
Appreciate it. Yes. Go check out the movie and check out MVP.
Check out MVP, everyone. And you can, like you said, see the film. It's worth your time. Everyone, thanks for listening to Sideline Sanity. Thanks to Nate Boyer. Don't forget to be brave and do good. Thanks, everyone.